Have you ever felt the subtle sting of being compared to someone else, as if your worth was silently measured against another person without your consent? Perhaps it happened in a relationship where your partner casually mentioned how someone else understood them better, or in a workplace where your manager praised a colleague while questioning your dedication. In those moments, something inside you shifts. You begin to doubt yourself. You start competing without realizing you entered a competition. This is not accidental. This is a psychological strategy known as triangulation, and it is far more common than most people realize. Triangulation occurs when a third person is intentionally or strategically inserted into a dynamic to create tension, jealousy, insecurity, or rivalry, instead of resolving issues directly. Rather than speaking honestly and openly, the manipulator uses comparison and indirect communication to destabilize you. Why does this work so effectively? Because human beings are wired for belonging. We fear rejection. We crave validation. When someone implies that another person is more valued, more competent, or more loyal, it activates a deep psychological alarm. The fear of losing connection pushes us into emotional survival mode. Instead of questioning the fairness of the comparison, we question ourselves. We work harder. We try to prove our worth. We become more compliant. And slowly, without noticing, we surrender power. Triangulation thrives in environments where communication is unclear and boundaries are weak. It feeds on ambiguity. It feeds on silence. It feeds on your desire to be chosen. But the most dangerous part is not the comparison itself. It is the confusion it creates. You begin wondering what was said behind your back. You imagine conversations that may or may not have happened. Your focus shifts from growth to approval. And once your attention is controlled, your emotions follow. The manipulator does not need to raise their voice or make direct threats. They simply position someone else as a reference point, and your mind does the rest. Understanding this is the first step towards psychological awareness. When you recognize the pattern, you begin to see that the tension was never about improvement. It was about control. What makes triangulation even more powerful is how ordinary it appears on the surface. It rarely announces itself as manipulation. It disguises itself as concern, casual observation, or harmless comparison. A friend may tell you that someone else questioned your loyalty. A partner might mention that another person finds them more supportive. A supervisor could hint that your colleague shows more initiative. None of these statements seem openly aggressive, yet each one plants a seed of insecurity. Why tell you this information instead of addressing the issue directly? Why involve another person at all? This is where psychological awareness becomes essential. Triangulation operates by redirecting your attention away from the real issue and toward imagined competition. Instead of focusing on clear communication, you become preoccupied with how you measure up. Social psychology teaches us that humans instinctively evaluate themselves through comparison. When a third party is introduced as a benchmark, your brain automatically assesses status, value, and belonging. The manipulator understands this dynamic, whether consciously or intuitively. By controlling the flow of information, they control perception. By controlling perception, they influence behavior. In workplaces, triangulation fuels rivalry that keeps employees distracted from questioning leadership. In families, it creates sibling tension that prevents unity. In romantic relationships, it keeps one partner anxious and striving for reassurance. The common thread is emotional dependency. When you are unsure of your standing, you seek clarity from the very person creating the confusion. This strengthens their position of power. Consider how this plays out internally. Your thoughts begin racing. Did I disappoint them? Am I being replaced? What should I change about myself? These questions consume mental energy. Instead of acting from confidence, you act from fear, and fear is fertile ground for control. The manipulator does not need to dominate openly because you start regulating yourself. You silence your needs to avoid conflict. You tolerate subtle disrespect to maintain connection. You compete silently, hoping to restore security. Over time, this erodes self-trust. You begin to rely on external signals to define your worth. The true danger of triangulation is not the third person. It is the internal narrative it creates. When your identity becomes dependent on comparison, emotional autonomy weakens. Recognizing this psychological shift is the moment suspense turns into clarity, because you begin to see that the rivalry was engineered. The moment you recognize that the rivalry was engineered, something powerful happens inside you. You begin to reclaim your awareness. You realize that the discomfort you felt was not proof of your inadequacy, but evidence of manipulation. This realization is not about blaming others. It is about strengthening your perception. Psychological autonomy begins when you pause and ask a different question. Instead of asking, "How do I compete?" you ask, "Why am I being compared?" Instead of wondering, "What did they say about me?" you ask, "Why is indirect communication being used at all?" These questions shift the focus from self-doubt to structural awareness. Triangulation loses its power when transparency is demanded. Direct communication is the antidote. When you calmly request clarity and refuse to engage in second-hand information, the manipulative dynamic weakens. Emotional boundaries become your shield. A boundary is not aggression. It is a declaration of self-respect. It means you will not participate in conversations about people who are not present. It means you will not internalize comparisons designed to destabilize you. It means you value truth over tension. This does not guarantee that manipulators will change, but it guarantees that you will. Empowerment is not about controlling others. It is about regulating your response. When you detach from the competition, you remove the fuel that sustains the strategy. You stop performing for approval. You stop shrinking to avoid being replaced. You recognize that authentic relationships are built on directness, not division. In workplaces, this may mean requesting feedback without reference to others. In families, it may mean refusing to carry messages between relatives. In romantic relationships, it may mean calmly stating that comparisons are unacceptable. Each small act of clarity rebuilds self-trust. Over time, your nervous system relaxes because you are no longer scanning for hidden threats. You understand that your value is not determined by someone else's positioning of another person. True strength lies in emotional steadiness. When you refuse triangulation, you step out of the psychological maze and into grounded awareness. You choose dignity over rivalry. You choose clarity over confusion. You choose autonomy over control. If you are benefiting from our topics, please subscribe, like, and turn on the bell notification so you can see our new videos early.